I want to tell you about two people. Both are in their early 60s. Both are roughly the same weight. Both have similar family health histories. Both exercise a few times a week. Neither smokes. Neither drinks excessively. On paper, they look almost identical. But one of them has blood that is measurably different from the other. Not different in the way most people think about. Not cholesterol, not blood sugar, not blood pressure. Different in something that most doctors never test for. Something that, according to a 16-year Harvard study of 2,692 adults, predicts with remarkable accuracy not just how long that person will live, but how well. That difference is the level of omega-3 fatty acids in their blood. And the gap between the two people, between the one with high omega-3 levels and the one with low omega-3 levels, translates, according to that Harvard study, into 2.2 extra years of life, a 27% lower risk of dying from any cause, a 35% lower risk of dying from heart disease, and a 40% lower risk of dying from coronary artery disease specifically, from one single omega-3 fatty acid alone. Now, here's what I want you to sit with for a moment. Those numbers, 2.2 years, 27%, 35%, 40%. They are not from a drug trial. They are not measuring the effect of a pharmaceutical intervention. They are measuring the effect of what these people had on their plates. 2 to 3 servings of fatty fish per week. That is the dietary difference between the two groups in studies like this one. Not a complicated protocol. Not an expensive treatment. Salmon on Monday. Sardines on Wednesday. A tin of mackerel on Friday. That is the lifestyle that produces those numbers in a 16-year human study. And yet, and this is what I want to spend today's video unpacking, most people over 50 are not eating anything close to that amount. Most people are not thinking about omega-3 status the way they think about their cholesterol or their blood pressure. Most people are consuming an omega-6 to omega-3 ratio that is, according to the research Dr. William Li cites, somewhere between 15 to 1 and 20 to 1, when the ratio associated with the lowest disease risk is closer to 4 to 1. That gap between where most people's omega-3 status actually is and where the research shows it needs to be is one of the most important and most correctable health deficits in adults over 50. As a physician who has studied Dr. Li's framework on the body's 5 health defense systems, I'm going to walk you through today exactly what omega-3 fatty acids do inside your body. Not in general terms, but with specific numbers, specific studies, and specific mechanisms. Across stem cell regeneration, cancer angiogenesis defense, cardiovascular protection, systemic inflammation, and brain health. And I'm going to answer the 4 questions I am asked most often about omega-3s. Is there a real difference between salmon and sardines? Does wild-caught matter or is farmed fine? Do fish oil supplements actually work as well as whole fish? And what is the exact weekly intake that the research supports? Not the vague eat more fish advice you have heard before, but the specific numbers that produced measured results in controlled human trials. Here's the one thing I want you to keep in mind as we go through this. Every defense system we have covered on this channel, angiogenesis, stem cells, microbiome, DNA protection, immunity, is operating inside an inflammatory environment. And the single most powerful dietary lever for shifting that inflammatory environment in the right direction is the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio in your diet. Omega-3 fatty acids are not just one more health food to add to a list. They are the anti-inflammatory foundation on which all 5 defense systems either thrive or struggle. That is what today is about. Stay with me to the end, because the salmon versus sardines answer, the supplement question, and the seaweed option for people who do not eat fish are all coming in the second half. And they are more nuanced than anything you have probably heard before. SECTIONON, what omega-3 fatty acids actually are. Let us start with clarity on terminology, because omega-3 is a category, not a single compound. And the differences between the types within that category matter significantly for how they affect your health. There are 3 main forms of omega-3 fatty acids relevant to human health. EPA, eicosapentaenoic acid, a 20-carbon fatty acid found primarily in marine sources. EPA is the primary omega-3 responsible for anti-inflammatory effects. It works by partially replacing arachidonic acid, the omega-6 fatty acid that drives inflammatory signaling, in cell membrane phospholipids. When EPA is present in higher concentrations, the ratio of inflammatory to anti-inflammatory signaling shifts measurably toward lower inflammation throughout the entire body. DHA, docosahexaenoic acid, a 22-carbon fatty acid found primarily in marine sources. DHA is the primary structural omega-3 in the brain. It constitutes approximately 40% of the polyunsaturated fatty acids in gray matter and 60% in the retina. DHA is less directly anti-inflammatory than EPA, but is critical for brain cell membrane integrity, neural signal transmission, and cognitive function. The 40% reduction in coronary death risk cited in the Harvard longevity study was specifically associated with DHA. ALA, alpha-linolenic acid, an 18-carbon omega-3 found primarily in plant sources: flaxseed, chia seeds, walnuts, hemp seeds. ALA is an essential fatty acid, meaning the human body cannot synthesize it and must obtain it from food. However, ALA must be converted to EPA and DHA in the body to produce most of the health effects we discussed today. The conversion rate is extremely inefficient. Typically, less than 5 to 15% of ALA is converted to EPA and less than 0.5% to DHA. Plant-based omega-3 sources provide ALA but are not reliable substitutes for marine EPA and DHA for most adults. The marine sources, fatty fish, fish roe, seaweed, algae, provide EPA and DHA directly. Dr. Lee specifically ranks fish roe, including botharga from gray mullet, caviar from sturgeon, and salmon roe, as the highest omega-3 content foods per gram in his published work. Among more commonly consumed fish, salmon, sardines, mackerel, anchovies, and Arctic char are consistently at the top of the EPA and DHA content rankings. And here's the ratio that Dr. Lee emphasizes as critically important for adults over 50, the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio in your diet. Omega-6 fatty acids found in vegetable oils, processed foods, and grain-fed meat are not inherently harmful. They are essential nutrients, but they compete with omega-3s for the same metabolic enzymes. In a modern Western diet, the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio is typically between 15:1 and 20:1. In traditional diets and in populations with the lowest rates of chronic disease, this ratio is closer to 4:1 or even 1:1. Higher omega-6 relative to omega-3 drives systemic inflammation. Higher omega-3 relative to omega-6 suppresses it. For cancer protection specifically, Dr. Lee states that the higher the overall intake of marine omega-3 in the diet, the greater the benefit. And conversely, higher omega-6 consumption relative to omega-3 is linked to unhealthy inflammation and increased disease risk. This ratio insight changes the practical prescription. It is not just about eating more omega-3 fish. It is also about reducing the omega-6 load from ultra-processed foods, seed oils, and grain-fed animal products that dominate the modern diet. SECTION-TWO. Stem cell activation. The Stanford mechanism Dr. William Lee specifically identifies omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids as having demonstrated the ability to increase stem cell activity. A direct quote from his published writing on food as medicine. The mechanism was identified by Stanford University researchers and published in 2019. Here's what they found. Stem cells in fat tissue contain a tiny, hair-like appendage called the primary cilium. This structure acts as a highly sensitive antenna, detecting signals from the surrounding environment and regulating the cell's function and fate. Stanford researchers discovered that the primary cilium is capable of sensing the presence of omega-3 fatty acids in the cellular environment. When omega-3 fatty acids bind to receptors on the primary cilium, they directly influence how stem cells divide and what types of cells they differentiate into. This finding, described by the researchers as a missing link between dietary science and molecular cell biology, provides the mechanistic explanation for why populations with high omega-3 intake show better tissue repair, better metabolic function, and better long-term health outcomes. The stem cells are literally sensing the omega-3 in the diet and adjusting their behavior accordingly. Connecting this to the dark chocolate finding from yesterday's video, cacao polyphenols double circulating stem cells by mobilizing them from bone marrow. Omega-3 fatty acids increase stem cell activity through direct signaling via the primary cilium. These are two different mechanisms acting on the same defense system. Consuming both, salmon cooked in olive oil with a square of dark chocolate in the afternoon, is stacking two distinct stem cell activation pathways simultaneously. SECTION-3, cardiovascular defense, the full numbers. The cardiovascular evidence for omega-3 fatty acids is among the most extensive in all of nutritional science. Here are the key numbers from the most important studies. Harvard Longevity Study, 2,692 senior adults, 16 years follow-up. Highest blood, omega-3 quartile versus lowest, 2.2 years longer lifespan, 27% decrease in all-cause mortality risk, 35% decrease in heart disease mortality, DHA specifically associated with 40% lower coronary heart disease death risk, GISSI, P-Revengione trial, 11,000 post-heart attack patients randomized to 1 gram per day of omega-3 PUFAs versus placebo, 3.5 years follow-up. Omega-3 group, 15% reduction in the primary endpoint of death, non-fatal heart attack, and stroke combined. 20% decrease in all-cause mortality. 30% decline in cardiovascular mortality, driven primarily by a steep reduction in sudden cardiac death. GISSI trial. High-risk cardiovascular patients receiving 4 grams per day of EPA as icosapent ethyl alongside statin therapy. Result, 25% decrease in the primary endpoint of major cardiovascular events compared to placebo. Additionally, 28% reduced risk of heart attacks, 50% reduced risk of fatal heart attacks, and 17% reduced risk of total coronary heart disease events. Meta-analysis of 38 randomized controlled trials, 149,051 participants. Omega-3 fatty acids were associated with reducing cardiovascular mortality with a relative risk of 0.93, meaning a 7% reduction at the population level. Non-fatal heart attack risk reduced with relative risk of 0.87, a 13% reduction. Coronary heart disease events reduced with relative risk of 0.91, a 9% reduction. These effects were statistically significant across all outcomes, with p-values ranging from 0.0001 to 0.01. ASCEND trial. Adults with diabetes receiving 840 milligrams per day of EPA and DHA. Cardiovascular disease death reduced significantly by 19%. DHA-specific meta-analysis. DHA supplementation reduced heart rate by 2.47 beats per minute, a physiologically meaningful reduction associated with lower cardiovascular risk. The convergence of these numbers across multiple independent studies, multiple populations, multiple trial designs, and multiple decades of research represents one of the strongest bodies of evidence in nutritional medicine. The question with omega-3s is not whether they protect the heart and reduce mortality. The evidence on that is settled. The questions are about dose, source, and form. SECTION4, anti-inflammatory defense. The molecular numbers in. Chronic inflammation is what Dr. Lee identifies as the underlying driver of cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and accelerated aging. And omega-3 fatty acids are, by several measurable parameters, among the most potent dietary anti-inflammatory agents available. Here's the mechanism in specific terms. EPA and DHA reduce inflammation through multiple simultaneous pathways. First, partial replacement of arachidonic acid, the omega-6 fatty acid, in cell membrane phospholipids. Arachidonic acid is the raw material for pro-inflammatory eicosanoids, the signaling molecules that drive inflammation. When EPA occupies the same membrane position, fewer pro-inflammatory eicosanoids are produced. Second, inhibition of NF-κB, nuclear factor kappa B, the primary transcription factor controlling the expression of inflammatory genes throughout the body. EPA and DHA activate PPAR-gamma, a nuclear receptor that suppresses NF-κB activity. Reduced NF-κB activity means reduced production of inflammatory cytokines, chemokines, and adhesion molecules across multiple tissues simultaneously. Third, EPA and DHA serve as substrates for production of resolvins and protectins, specialized pro-resolving mediators. Unlike anti-inflammatory drugs that simply block inflammatory signals, resolvins and protectins actively resolve existing inflammation and restore tissue homeostasis. This resolution pathway is a more sophisticated and biologically complete anti-inflammatory mechanism than simple blockade. Laboratory studies have shown that DHA reduces levels of IL-1 beta and TNF-alpha, two of the primary inflammatory cytokines associated with cancer development and progression, in lipopolysaccharide-stimulated cells. DHA also reduced nitric oxide production from inflammatory cells, with significant reduction at P less than 0.05. The anti-inflammatory effect of omega-3s directly supports all 5 of Dr. Lai's defense systems. Chronic inflammation depletes stem cells. Chronic inflammation disrupts the gut microbiome. Chronic inflammation accelerates DNA damage accumulation. Chronic inflammation impairs natural killer cell function. And chronic inflammation promotes abnormal angiogenesis, creating the vascular environment in which tumors can recruit blood supply more easily. By reducing systemic inflammation, omega-3 fatty acids improve the baseline functioning of every defense system simultaneously. SECTION5, salmon versus sardines. The practical comparison. This is the question I hear most often from adults over 50 who are trying to increase their omega-3 intake, and the honest answer involves several nuances that most health content does not address. Omega-3 content comparison per 100 grams of cooked fish. Atlantic salmon, approximately 2.2 grams of combined EPA and DHA. This is a high amount and makes salmon one of the most efficient sources per serving. However, farmed Atlantic salmon's omega-3 content varies depending on the feed composition. Farmed salmon fed high omega-6 vegetable oils may contain lower omega-3 levels than wild-caught salmon. Sardines, approximately 1.5 grams of combined EPA and DHA per 100 grams, with canned sardines in water or olive oil retaining most of this content. Sardines are smaller, lower on the food chain, and therefore accumulate less mercury and other environmental contaminants than larger fish. From a safety standpoint, particularly for regular consumption, sardines are arguably superior to salmon for most adults. Mackerel, approximately 2.5 grams of EPA and DHA per 100 grams, higher than salmon, but Atlantic mackerel is subject to more mercury accumulation concerns than Pacific mackerel or sardines. Anchovies, approximately 1.5 grams per 100 grams, with very low mercury content due to small size. Arctic char, comparable to salmon in omega-3 content with generally lower contamination levels. Fish roe, specifically salmon roe, bodharga from gray mullet, and sturgeon caviar, contains the highest omega-3 density of any seafood Dr. Lee ranks in Eat to Beat disease. These are not everyday foods for most people, but they represent the most concentrated marine omega-3 source available per gram. Now the source question. Wild-caught versus farmed. Wild-caught Pacific salmon, sockeye, coho, king, fed a natural diet of smaller fish and krill, is consistently higher in EPA and DHA than farmed Atlantic salmon. The omega-3 content of farmed fish depends entirely on what the fish are fed. As the aquaculture industry has shifted toward higher omega-6 vegetable oils and fish feed to reduce costs, the omega-3 content of farmed salmon has declined measurably over the past 2 decades. Dr. Lee ranks fatty fish, salmon, red mullet, halibut, Pacific oysters, gray mullet, sardines, Arctic char, bluefish, sea bream, Mediterranean sea bass, spiny lobster, and anchovies as his top omega-3 seafood sources. The diversity of this list reflects the food synergy principle. A rotation across multiple species provides a broader range of associated nutrients and bioactive compounds than any single fish consumed exclusively. SECTIONSIX, supplements versus whole fish. This is where the research becomes nuanced and where I want to give you the honest picture. Fish oil supplements provide EPA and DHA in concentrated, standardized doses. This is their advantage. A high-quality fish oil capsule may deliver 1 to 2 grams of EPA and DHA in a single serving. For adults who do not regularly eat fatty fish, supplementation provides a reliable way to increase blood omega-3 levels. However, whole fish provides additional benefits that supplementation does not. Complete protein with all essential amino acids. Selenium, a mineral with documented DNA protective properties. B vitamins, particularly B12 and niacin. Vitamin D, particularly in wild-caught fatty fish. Astaxanthin in salmon, a carotenoid with potent antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties that does not exist in standard fish oil supplements. A 28-day comparison study of 4 different omega-3 supplements found that triglyceride-form fish oil, the natural form found in whole fish, was associated with greater increases in blood omega-3 levels than ethyl ester form fish oil, which is the most common commercial supplement form. Phospholipid form omega-3S from krill oil showed distinct absorption characteristics. The form of omega-3 in the supplement affects its bioavailability. The practical implication: whole fatty fish 2 to 3 times per week is the primary recommendation from the research Dr. Lee cites. For adults who cannot achieve this through diet alone, a high-quality triglyceride-form fish oil supplement providing 1 to 2 grams of combined EPA and DHA daily is the most evidence-based supplement option. Ethyl ester form supplements at equivalent doses are less bioavailable. SECTION7, the seaweed option. This is a detail from Dr. Lai's framework that connects omega-3s to the Mediterranean diet concept, and that matters specifically for adults who do not eat fish. Seaweed and algae are the original sources of marine EPA and DHA. The fish do not synthesize these fatty acids independently. They accumulate EPA and DHA by eating microalgae and seaweed throughout their lives. The omega-3s in fish are ultimately plant-derived, just concentrated up the food chain. This means that edible seaweeds, nori, wakame, kombu, hijiki, provide meaningful EPA and DHA directly without requiring fish consumption. Algae-based omega-3 supplements, which extract DHA directly from microalgae, are increasingly available and provide the same molecular form of DHA found in fish. For vegetarians, vegans, or adults with fish allergies, algae-derived omega-3 supplements represent the most direct equivalent to fish-based EPA and DHA. This is part of why Dr. Lai's Mediterranean diet framework is so compelling from a nutritional standpoint. Traditional Asian cuisines incorporate seaweed regularly, in soups, in salads, wrapped around sushi. Traditional Mediterranean cuisines incorporate fatty fish regularly. The combination provides omega-3 diversity from both seaweed and fish sources simultaneously, consistent with the food synergy principle of multiple complementary sources working together. SECTIONEIT, the practical protocol. Based on the full body of evidence reviewed today, here is the specific protocol the research supports. Target intake: 2 to 3 servings of fatty fish per week, each serving approximately 100 grams cooked weight. This level of intake is consistent with what produced the longevity benefits in the Harvard 16-year study and the cardiovascular benefits across multiple large trials. Fish priority: wild-caught salmon, sardines, mackerel, anchovies, and Arctic char represent the best combination of high omega-3 content and low contamination risk for regular consumption. Rotating among multiple species provides nutritional diversity. Preparation: omega-3 fatty acids are sensitive to high heat oxidation. Baking, poaching, steaming, and gentle sautéing preserve omega-3 content better than deep frying or high-temperature grilling. Adding lemon juice, vitamin C, before serving helps protect the fatty acids from oxidation. Pairing: salmon cooked in extra virgin olive oil. The combination Dr. Li highlights specifically provides EPA and DHA from the fish alongside oleocanthal and oleic acid from the olive oil, which protects stem cells and reduce inflammation through different mechanisms. One dish, multiple defense systems. This is food synergy in practice. For supplementation, when fish intake is insufficient, 1 to 2 grams per day of combined EPA and DHA in triglyceride form, with a meal containing fat to improve absorption. The omega-3 to omega-6 ratio goal: simultaneously reduce omega-6 intake from seed oils and ultra-processed food while increasing omega-3 intake from fish. The ratio improvement matters as much as the absolute omega-3 dose. Let me close with the number that started this video: 2.2 extra years of life, from maintaining high blood omega-3 levels over 16 years. That is not a modest finding. In a 16-year study of 2,692 people, the difference between high and low omega-3 status was 2.2 years of additional lifespan, plus 27% lower overall mortality risk, 35% lower heart disease mortality, and 40% lower coronary death risk from DHA specifically. These are the numbers that, as a physician, make omega-3 intake one of the most straightforward recommendations I make to every adult over 50. 2 to 3 servings of fatty fish per week. The evidence behind this recommendation is among the most replicated and most consistent in all of medicine. Tomorrow on Thrive After 50, we go deeper on extra virgin olive oil, the food that Dr. Li identifies as a stem cell protector, an anti-angiogenic agent, and a cornerstone of the Mediterranean diet, including why not all olive oil is equal, how to read the label, and the specific compound. Oleocanthal, that produces a documented anti-inflammatory effect comparable to ibuprofen at 1 tablespoon per day. Subscribe to Thrive After 50 so you do not miss it. I will see you tomorrow. All content is for educational purposes only and is inspired by the published research of Dr. William Li and the Angiogenesis Foundation. Thrive After 50 is an independent educational channel and is not affiliated with, endorsed by, or officially connected to Dr. William Li in any way. Always consult your own physician for personal medical advice.